So this evening, like we said, we're going to be talking about some very important information about the McKinney-Vento, the attendance policy, the out-of-district transfer. And all these topics we're discussing, they are born out of the feedback that we receive from our family from time to time. So please don't close your mind. Don't assume you already know the information. It is better to know, to be in the know, than to be ignorant. So please, let us all learn together. I will also encourage us, please mute yourself so as to avoid any form of disruptions. I also want us to please write your name in the chat box so that we can know how many people are attending this meeting tonight. Again, please sit back as we dive in. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. All right. So as we all know, it is Thanksgiving season. We are thankful for all of you. We are thankful that we all are here to share. We are alive and we are well. Our children are okay. The families are doing well. We are thankful. If you celebrate Thanksgiving, we say Happy Thanksgiving. And if you do not, we are also saying we are thankful for you. So our agenda tonight is pretty short and sweet. We are going to be looking at some important data, as we always do. And we will be delving into some other important information that, especially for our elementary parents, the early elementary parents. And we will go through the agenda pretty quick. Before we go on, I want us to quickly take a look at the district level team. So for many of us that have been attending this meeting for a while, we know that Mr. William Esquivel has been a very good colleague. Himself and myself, we've been hosting this meeting for some years now. But Mr. William has to change department. He's still with us, but he just changed department. We will surely miss him, but we have a very wonderful replacement for him in the person of Miss Melanie Robinson, and that will be our EL Data and Community Specialist. She's also here tonight. We want to say thank you, welcome, and we are excited you are here. Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm having camera problems, but I'm glad to be here with you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Let's take a quick look at this data. We know that our English learner population, they make a very sizable part of our entire will enrollment. So if you take a look at this data, the data says 4,786 English learners. And those are the students from levels 1 through 4.9, according to WIDA Access. So we have about 23 level pending, and that number keeps changing. I'm sure it's less than that right now, which we kind of increase the upper number. As of today, we have 92 represented countries in our Wayne Township School. Our top 6, US, Nigeria, Honduras, Haiti, Mexico, and Nicaragua are our top 6. We have 78 spoken languages, and our top 6 are listed. Spanish, Yoruba, Creole, Haitian Creole, and Tingria are our top 6. And together, the language assistance program, or the language learners, they make about 27% of the entire Wayne enrollment. So that's exciting. That's good to hear. And the number keeps increasing. So at this time, before we go into our discussion, I would like for us, if there's any parents here, we want to hear feedback from the parent-teacher conferences that we had last month, the month of October. So are there questions you have? I know we met a couple parents this I think about some weeks ago, and they said they did not receive the information on time. They were quite confused. So we want to hear from you. Are there anyone in this meeting tonight that you would love to share your experience? Was it good? Did you have, the translation, or did you need a translator? Was it a good experience? We just wanted to have some feedbacks, and if we have areas of growth and whatever that needs to be done. Are there any feedbacks? You're welcome to unmute yourself and talk, or you can write something in the chat box if you have any comment. I'm going to wait a couple minutes to see if there are anyone that might have any form of comments. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Nefedova from Roby. Thank you for joining us tonight. Please do not forget to write your name in the chat box so that we can record our attendance. All right. So that we do not waste our time, we want to be respectful of you. We'll just go ahead. And if there are questions at all, I'll be checking the chat box intermittently to see if there are any questions. Very quickly, like I mentioned before, especially for our elementary parents, if you have students in grades 1 through 3, like 3rd grade, there's a test that it's very popular. I'm sure you would have at some point heard about iRead. So iRead testing, and the meaning of iRead is basically Indiana Reading Evaluation and Determination. So this is a reading assessment that's developed in accordance with the state legislation in Indiana. Okay. Basically, it is designed to measure foundational reading skills based on the academic standard through 3rd grade. So before now, this assessment is meant for 3rd graders only. But beginning this school year, the school year 2024-2025, all 2nd grade students will be participating in the spring testing in order to obtain earlier measure of reading proficiency. So that means we just want to try and be proactive. So just to ensure solid foundation, students will be required to be retained in 3rd grade if they do not pass iRead. So it is assumed this set of students would have attempted iRead from their 2nd grade. And if they pass, wonderful. If they do not pass, they're going to repeat the test again in 3rd grade. And if at that point they did not pass the test, then they will be retained. However, there are some exceptions that are in place, and they are called good cause exemptions, but they have to be able to meet certain criteria, they have to be eligible. The last time we encourage you all, if you have any questions concerning that, please reach out to your teachers and they'll be able to explain to you. But this evening, I want to also mention, just very quickly, you're wondering, what is good cause exemption? So if a student's total year of enrollment is less than 2 school years, note that phrase, 2 school years. So such students may qualify for a good cause exemption. So let's take, for instance, if a student joins Wayne Township in the middle, maybe 30 days after the semester has started, the school year has started. And so at the end, it might not be considered 2 full years. such students may receive good cause exemption. But, okay, I'll come back to that question. I see a question right now. But if a student enrolls at the start of grade 1 in any Indiana school and receives services throughout the first and second grade, they will not be eligible. Why? The reason is because due to receiving 2 full years of EL services, they will not be eligible. And like I mentioned before, if such student is enrolled in grade 1 after first 30 calendar days of the school years, then they will be considered eligible for good cause exemption. I think I have a question right in the chat. My child has been taking this test and speaks English at home. How can they leave the program? So I will want to also shed some light into this question. Thank you for that question. So normally, because a child speaks English at home, does not automatically qualify that that child does not need any support. So this is how the process goes. Once a student is enrolled in a school, in a school district, if that student indicates in their home language survey that they speak another language, whether it's the student that speaks the language or the language at home, that student is automatically tested, is assessed to be able to see whether such a student will need English support. So depending on the scores, that will determine whether they need support. And this support ranges from levels 1 through 4.9. So the level of the student will determine the amount of support such students will receive. Okay, so and if that student is proficient, and how do you know the student is proficient? If that student is 4.9 above, okay, such students can be considered proficient, so they might not need any services. I hope that explains answers your question. Yeah, Miss Jeanette, I hope that answers your question. And if not, you're welcome to reach out later on. My email is right there and my number is there. Please feel free to shoot me an email and or reach out to your teachers, your school teacher, like your student's teacher, and they'll be able to explain more. That means Soleni will start taking this text next year. Okay, I want to assume Soleni is in grade 1 right now. Okay, so okay, cool. Yes, Soleni will start taking that, start attempting iRead from next year. Yes. And they can improve because they're already receiving services in our department, the language assistance program. They continue to monitor and, make sure they are climbing up the ladder. That's how to improve. I hope that answers your question. All right. In case there are other questions, after this presentation, we'll be able to answer more questions. But without further ado, I'm going to invite Mr. Stephen Jackson, who is a McKinney-Vento liaison for the district and is also a district social worker. So he will be sharing with us tonight about the McKinney-Vento program and the attendance policy, because a lot of times we might be confused or we might not be in the know of some information, but tonight we want to shed some light. And if you please feel free to ask a question. Over to you. Ms. Berkon, yes, I'm going to answer your question later on, okay? After this presentation, just stay back, all right? Thank you. Mr. Jackson, do you want me to?
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Do you want me to click on the?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. All right. All right. Over to you, sir.
All right. I am trying to log in on my phone here to make sure that we are all on the same page. Let's see here. Okay, all right. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen M. Jackson. I serve as the um, district social worker for Wayne Township Schools, and part of my role as the district social worker, I oversee the McKinney-Vento program and also the foster care point of contact I serve for the district. So I just want to briefly go over McKinney-Vento today to talk about what it is, what it covers, why it was created. Then we'll have a brief discussion about attendance and also about out of district options. So in 1987, the McKinney-Vento Act was passed by Congress. It was created by two senators who understood that and were concerned regarding rights that students and families have that are experiencing housing insecurity or homelessness. So it was passed in 87. It was reauthorized by Congress in 1990, 94, 2001, and as recently as 2015. And again, its purpose is to ensure students have stability, access, and success as they are experiencing housing insecurity, which can create a barrier to their educational attainment. Next slide, please. The federal law defines a student as homeless as if their nighttime residence is not fixed, regular, and adequate. So how do we define fixed, regular, and adequate? Well, the definitions are here on the screen. And basically fixed is if it's not permanent, that is not subject to change, and that is stationary. Regular is defined as used on a predictable, routine, or consistent basis, ergo nightly. And adequate is sufficient for meeting both the physical and psychological needs typically met in home environments. So an example of a home not being adequate would be one that doesn't have running water or one that doesn't have utilities. A regular example would be if a student is or a family is moving from house to house, or they're there for a couple of days in one residence, and then they're at another residence for a couple of days. And then fixed is stationary and permanent. That could be a family that is living in a car. That's not considered to be fixed. Living in an RV on a campground, that's not considered to be fixed. But also the key with this is that is the nighttime residence. So it has to be their nighttime residence. So if we have a student that is going over to a grandparent's house or a relative's house or a family's house or friend's house after school, and they're staying there for most of the day, but at night, they're staying somewhere else. They're staying somewhere totally different. That nighttime residence is the one that we would use to determine whether or not it's fixed, regular, or adequate, not the house that they're staying in, that they could be staying in at a majority of the time. But again, it's their nighttime residence that we use to qualify families for services. Next slide, please. And so here are some examples of McKinney-Vento in terms of how it's defined. So you will qualify for McKinney-Vento if you're living in a shelter, including transitional housing shelters. So that would include like any shelters for domestic violence, any shelters for homeless shelters, such as family the family shelters that are out there, living on the streets, abandoned buildings, in cars, trailers. We've had families that were living in at businesses, at their place of business. We've had families that are living in storage facilities. Any place that's not fit for habitation will qualify for McKinney-Vento. Living in hotels and motels due to a lack of other suitable housing would qualify. And also doubling up, temporarily staying with a family or friend due to a lack of adequate housing or financial conditions. So sometimes families go through economic hardships and they have to go and stay with a relative or a friend. that's what we consider to be doubled up. And that is actually the highest number of families that qualify for McKinney-Vento qualify under doubled up. Next slide, please. So these are my job, my responsibilities that I have in the district. The first and foremost is that I make sure that we are identifying and properly identifying students and enrolling students that qualify for McKinney-Vento services. So first we have to identify families and students that qualify, and then we have to make sure that they are enrolled in school. I also make sure that students and families receive their educational services. So if it's special education, if it's LAP services, things of that nature, I ensure that occurs. I also provide referrals to community services, to community organizations. We work closely with the trustee's office. We work closely with other organizations in the community to ensure that families are able to access those resources. Parents are informed of opportunities of their children, to have meaningful opportunities to participate in their children's education. Just because a family is experiencing housing insecurity or housing instability does not prevent them from being informed and having meaningful opportunity to participate in their child's education. Next slide, please. If you go into any of our schools in Wayne Township, you would notice, you should be able to notice that the parental rights about McKinney-Vento should be posted. We also, I also do the letters for students that are seniors that need letters for the FAFSA so that they can carry on into when they go into the post-secondary, that they're able to receive complete the FAFSA, and they don't go under their parents. For those that are unaccompanied, they go on their own, and so that makes a big difference for students. We also make sure that our families, our students are provided transportation. And then I also conduct professional development and outreach opportunities as well to school staff. So those are some of the things that I am in charge of here. So next slide, please. I mentioned the term unaccompanied youth. And unaccompanied youth are youth who are not in the physical custody of a legal parent or guardian. And that does include runaways. Those that are excluded from the home, meaning that they were kicked out and abandoned by parents or guardians. Even at like at the hospital, we've had situations where children were abandoned at the hospital by parents, and so those children would be unaccompanied youth. And so basically, any student that is not living with their legal parent or guardian, then they will be considered to be an unaccompanied youth. And then if they're in a situation where they're not in a regular, fixed, adequate nighttime residence, then those students would be considered to be unaccompanied youth under McKinney-Vento. And we would subsequently provide services for those students just as we would all other students. Next slide, please. All right, so when it comes to McKinney-Vento, there are certain rights that are expected, but everything that we do is student-centered, meaning all considerations that we do are considered to be student-centered, considerations, including, so when we make a decision in terms of like what school would the child go to if there is a change of school that needs to be considered. So we look at, okay, how much time is left in the school year? If it's in the beginning of the school year, is it in their best interest to remain there, or is it in their best interest to go to a school that's closer to where they're temporarily staying? Looking at the student's age, are there any special education or other educational needs that need to be taken in consideration when we're approving the McKinney-Vento and deciding which school should the child be in. The impact of the commute. Wayne Township has a tier system with our transportation department. And sometimes the students are the first ones on that live out of district, and then they're the last ones to get off. And so is that commute going to create an unreasonable commute that will negatively impact that child's education? And so we have to take that in consideration, along with safety issues and also sibling placement. Are there siblings in the district that will be impacted if we make a change? And so we have to consider all of that when we're looking at McKinney-Vento services. Next slide, please. So sometimes we don't always agree when with the parents, and the parents may not always agree with the school, and they may not always agree with my decision. But when that happens, students still are allowed, if they're not enrolled, they must be enrolled immediately. And then they are referred over to me. I have to work with the family. I serve as an advocate. So I tell the family, I give them advice in terms of what I believe is in their best, what may be in the best interest. They let me know, they give me feedback in terms of what they feel like is in the best interest. And if it comes down to there's not an agreement that can be made, then we have there's a dispute process that we have to go through. And so that involves some paperwork and involves the Department of Education. They come in and they will work with the families and with the school district to assess and determine what is in the best interest. But we try to avoid that. We try to avoid, the dispute process. It doesn't happen very often. We try to work with the families to let them know, hey, this is what we've determined to be in the best interest. And we try to work through it with the families, of course. So there are some signs that our staff and our meaning our parent liaisons, our teachers, our front office staff, our building administrators. There are some signs that we like to make people aware of that tells us that a family may be experiencing homelessness or housing instability, excuse me. And so we try to look at those things, such as a lack of educational continuity, meaning has the child been in school at a bunch of different schools, several different schools? Are there missing records that the family is needing to enroll and they don't have access to it? Does the family have an inability to pay any fees that are there? Are there gaps in the skill development? Are there poor organizational skills that the child may be displaying, or poor ability to conceptualize things? So we look at all of that as some of the signs regarding the lack of educational continuity. Next slide, please. And Ms. Book, is there any way to get that box off of the screen, Ms. Roberson? Thank you. So we're looking at a lack of personal space after school is also a consideration as part of the signs that we look at to recognize that, hey, this child may be experiencing homelessness. And so a lack of personal space would be consistent lack of preparation for school that can have an impact on the child. Lacking basic school supplies. We do provide school supplies for families that are experiencing homelessness and that are signed up for McKinney-Vento. Every summer we send home backpacks, we send home school supplies, we send home educational materials, workbooks that the children can use during the summertime, so that there isn't an educational gap that exists during the summertime. So we strongly encourage our children to work on that, and it's for the next grade level that the child will be entering in the next school year. Also, elevated concern for the safety of the student is something that we look at when we talk about personal space. Are they living in a situation or a residence where their safety could be a concern? We try to address all of those issues. So, next slide, please. And then poor health and nutrition. That's also another sign that we look at. Are there unmet medical and dental needs? Are there any skin rashes, chronic hunger, or food hoarding? We do have a food pantry entitled called the Giants Marketplace. In fact, the next Giants Marketplace is on December the 3rd. We are doing something new this year with the pantry. We are actually requiring families to sign up to receive a food pantry box this year. And so that'll be coming out in Sunday's Parent Square. So if you, I would strongly suggest that everyone on this call, if you are in need of any type of nutrition assistance or nutritional resource, to pay attention to the Parent Square coming out Sunday, because it's limited to the first 60 families that sign up for services, and that's open to everyone. But then those families that are experiencing McKinney-Vento, we also have a food pantry at the Ben Davis Ninth Grade Center, where we provide families with food that are in need. Next slide, please. Another sign that we look at is poor hygiene. We've had instances where we've had children come and they have to shower at the school because there's a lack of a shower accessible showering at their temporary residence. So we look at that again. One of the things we look at is it adequate in terms of where they're staying? Is there running water? We also see if a child is wearing clothes for several days. If there's odors on the clothing, that are not typical for their age or stage of development. Is there inconsistent grooming? We also, I'm taking some time to plug that we have a clothing boutique at the Ben Davis Ninth Grade Center that is open during the time that the food pantry is open. So on December the 3rd, if you are in need of any clothes or anything, you can also go over, and that's open to everyone. You just don't have to be McKinney-Vento. Again, it's open to anyone in the district. And I can tell you right now, our Wayne Township families come over there and they come out with bags and bags of coats and clothes and stuff. So if that's something that you're in need of, you don't need to be eligible for or signed up for McKinney-Vento in order to take advantage of that program as well. Next slide, please. And so also, and this is really where our classroom teachers and our counselors and our parent liaisons come into play as well, is they notice any social and behavioral changes or concerns. Is there a marked change in behavior? Is a student who is, if he or she is really outgoing and the personality is bubbling but their behavior has changed, they're withdrawn or they're not they're just not themselves. We that can be a sign of maybe some housing instability that's going on there. Extreme shyness is another one. Do they have difficulty trusting people, trusting others? Is their peers circle really small or non-existent? We look at those. Of course, there can be signs of other things that are going on, but sometimes that can be a telltale sign that the child may be in a living residence that is impacting their psychological and sociological needs. So, next slide, please. Also, sometimes when we talk to parents, we try to listen to the words that are being used by the parents and by the students or the guardians. And part of it is if we ask questions, do they exhibit anger or embarrassment when we ask them about their current address? Do they have an avoidance of questions that are related to the current address? If we ask them, where are you living, where are you staying, and they can't really give us an address, or the address they give us is I've gotten addresses that were abandoned buildings and stuff that really and so that's that's a clue for us that the family may be experiencing some housing instability. So we look at that as well. All right. Next slide, please. Are there any questions that anyone has regarding McKinney-Vento? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Yeah.
Well, I know you're going to proceed to the next session, but like he said, are there questions? Do you have any question about the presentation Mr. Jackson just shared? So I was trying to kind of reiterate part of what he was saying about if you're sharing houses with a friend, or if you're doubling up with a family member, you may be able to benefit from some of the services provided by the McKinney-Vento. And like I always say, it is nothing to be ashamed of. If you need help, you need help, and it's not forever. So please feel free to always reach out and ask questions. You can go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
All right. So as everyone here may be aware, we have a new law in Indiana, a new attendance law, and it's definitely having an impact on our families and on our schools and in our community. And so I just want to kind of briefly go over the Indiana attendance law, what it means for families, how does that process play out, what are some of the guidelines that we're operating under as a school district regarding the attendance law. So the new Indiana state attendance law, it does require schools to alert the parents and guardians of a student's unexcused absence at both 5 and 10 days before legal intervention by the Marion County Prosecutor's Office. In Wayne Township, we actually do 5, 7, 9, and then 10. So we take it a little bit further than what the actual law requires. But we try to avoid getting to that level of habitual student truancy, because once you get to that level, then that's when potential criminal charges can be filed in the form of a Class B misdemeanor or level 6 felony for the parents or guardians. So we try to avoid getting to that level of regarding your child's attendance. So next, we're going to talk about the types of absence. So the law defines excused absences as absences regarded as legitimate reasons for being out of school as per the school district school policy. So illnesses, whether it's reported to the school, by the parent or guardian, illnesses that are verified by a note from a physician, a therapist, family funeral, maternity leave, military connected families, if absence is related to deployment or return. Those are all examples of excused absences. The key is, if there is an excused absence, the key is that to communicate with the school to let them know that the child is going to be out. And if it's a legitimate reason, as like one of the examples here, then you don't have to worry about it, because it'll be listed as an excused absence. However, if you don't notify the school, then that can trigger some potential issues under the new attendance law. Next slide, please. So what are the unexcused absences? Well, the unexcused absences are any absences that are not covered under the definition of excused or exempt. Skipping class or skipping school for the day is not an excuse, is an unexcused absence, excuse me. And absence without a valid reason or documentation. Like I say, if you have documentation or you have a reason why a child is not in school and why they're absent, again, to avoid it being an unexcused absence, please notify the school and then provide any documentation that will validate the absence. And that's really just really very simple and clear cut on that. So next slide, please. So we're going to talk about exempt. What is an exempt? Absence is authorized and excused by law under certain circumstances. So there are certain things that when a child is not in school, that they are exempt, such as serving as a page or honoree at for the Indiana General Assembly, serving on the precinct election board as a helper to a political candidate on the party on election day, if they're subpoenaed to testify in court. So all those and these other examples that are listed here, those are reasons you're volunteering at the state fair. Those are reasons that is considered to be an exempt absence. Okay, and so if your child is participating in one of these activities, again, please notify the school. Next slide, please. So again, I talked about in our district, we have 5, 7, 9, and 10. So for 5 days unexcused absence, a mandatory parent conference with the school attendance officer and creation of a attendance intervention plan will go into effect. The conference attendees must include the representative of the school, so that can be the principal, the AP, which is assistant principal, the homeschool liaison, but also must include the teacher of the absent student. In addition, the family of the student may invite a representative if the parent makes the request to school officials 48 hours prior, so that's 2 days prior to the attendance conference being held. Other staff, please also note that other staff may also attend as needed based on the absent students' needs. So if there are LAP services that are being received, if there are special education services that are being administered for the child, those are also those individuals that represent those departments may also be in attendance at the conference. And thank you, Ms. Robertson. She said you can also notify the school of absence through Parent Square. That's a great note. Next slide, please. So what does this student attendance plan look like that I mentioned under the 5 days? So the plan may look like, may include wraparound services. It may be a specific description of the behavior that is required or prohibited for the student. The plan may include any additional disciplinary action that the school will take if the absences continue. If applicable, a referral to any counseling, mentoring, or other services will be addressed during the within the attendance plan. And if applicable, whether a student is expected to attend any additional, quote unquote, additional services to the extent possible. And also the period for which the plan is effective is not to exceed 45 instructional days after the plan has been established. So those are kind of the things that the plan may include that you may see and sign off on under the plan. Next slide, please. So I talked a little bit about the 7 and 9 unexcused absences. After the 7 and 9, then the implementation of a truancy prevention plan, and then you will receive phone calls from the attendance officer. They have to, the school will complete an attendance notification form for students with 7 and 9 days unexcused absences. And the school will also continue to monitor student attendance and implement the truancy prevention plan. However, next slide, please. Once we get to 10 days unexcused absences under the law, there must be a legal notice of students' truant status and mandatory referral to the Marion County Prosecutor's Office. At 10 days, exceeding 10 days, then you are considered to be a habitual truancy, and legal intervention by the Marion County Prosecutor's Office, as I mentioned earlier, may be include charges of failure to ensure school attendance, which is a Class B misdemeanor, or educational neglect, which is a level 6 felony. So there is some real teeth behind this law in terms of attendance. And again, the best way to avoid any of this is that if your child is going to be absent and it's excused, please communicate with the school. That's the best thing to prevent and avoid any of this stuff. Next slide, please.
I think that's the end.
Yeah, it should be the last one. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to briefly, I know that there was questions regarding out of district, such as if a family moves out of the district, can they continue, can they remain enrolled? That is actually, the best way to put that is if they are McKinney-Vento, meaning that they qualified, they're already eligible, they're already signed up for McKinney-Vento, they're eligible, we've got them on file. That's that determination is what we call a best interest determination, meaning what's in the best interest for the child at that moment. So if you have someone that say you got a kindergarten student and they're in Wayne and they're at arbitrarily Westlake, so a random school, Westlake, but then they move all the way on the east side of Indianapolis, and they are 20 miles or 15 miles away from the school of origin, which would be Westlake, but they want to remain there. We will have to look at like I discussed earlier, we have to look at the commute. We have to look at the age of the child, because we're not going to have a kindergarten student on the bus for 2 hours. That's just not something that is reasonable. So, and so in that best interest, we would probably say it's probably in their best interest to enroll in the school where they're temporarily residing. But that child, remember, can remain in that school that they're originally in until that dispute process is resolved. Now, if it's a child if you moved out of the district and you're not experiencing any homelessness, you're encouraged to enroll in the school where you're residing. But I would always say work with the building administrator, work with the building parent liaison, and advocate for your child to remain there if that's a possibility. Again, that's something that can be looked at on a case-by-case basis. So just work with your school staff, specifically your parent liaisons, your school counselors, your school administrators, to see, is it in their best interest to remain enrolled in the school that is in district. But if they're McKinney-Vento, then you have certain rights that you're protected underneath that. So that's the best way I could really kind of explain that. Also, it's around March or so, there's an out of district waiver that the district provides, and it's an open waiver. So if you move out of the district and you're not under those any of those special programs or special protections such as McKinney-Vento offers, and you want your child to come back to Wayne the next school year, you can apply for an out of district waiver. However, that does not provide transportation services if you are approved for out of district waiver. So that's just something that to keep in mind as well. So, and if there are not any other, if there aren't, are there any questions regarding the attendance law, or and if not, if you have any questions later on, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to your school counselor, your school parent liaison, your school assistant principal, or the school teacher, then they should be able to assist you if you have any questions regarding the attendance and how the law is being implemented in our district in accordance to the school board policies created by our school board.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jackson. Will you please write your contact details in the chat box so people can know in case they have other questions even after now? Please pay, yeah. Please also note that, you know, the way the window to apply for the out of district, as is written in the chat box, is between February and March, I believe.
Yeah.
February and March. Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's between February and March because by the time we come back from spring break, they'll be due. So they can start inquiring about February. They should be on the district's website between February and March. And I want to say definitely start inquiring by February.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds accurate, Ms. Robertson.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Thank you so much, Mr. Jackson. Those are lots and lots of information. And I believe we have been able to learn a lot from the information shared with us tonight about the McKinney-Vento, about the out of district transfer, about the attendance policy. The attendance policy is actually very, very important right now. And if we are not paying attention to the necessary things we are supposed to do with our students, you can get in trouble. The last thing we want to do is for our parents, our families to get in trouble with the government. So please pay attention to all this information. Make sure you're talking to your teachers. Make sure you're talking to us. We have our information listed in this presentation. Please feel free to reach out. Feel free to reach out to your school. As mentioned by Mr. Jackson, your administrators in your buildings, the parent liaisons, please make sure you are talking to people. Thank you so much. So as we wrap up, we have a few minutes to go. Let's finish up with the presentation and other things that we have to do. I know there may be some questions I'm going to go through. Let's look at some dates. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. 1 second. Okay, so we want to make sure you are paying attention to this date. Please note this date. Next week, November 27th to Friday, Wednesday, November 27th to Friday, November 29th. There will be no school. There will be Thanksgiving break. So please take note of those dates. Also, next month, our meeting will be virtual again. So I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for adjusting your schedule, within a short time, adjusting your schedule so that you are able to switch to virtual. Okay, we know we initially had this meeting scheduled for in person, but because of the weather, we do not want to risk anyone's life. And that's why we're very concerned about your safety. So that's why we had to quickly switch it over to virtual. Thank you so much for adjusting to that change. Friday, December 20 will be the end of first semester. The 23rd of December, which is on Monday through Friday, January 3rd, will be our winter break. There will be no school in those, for those 2 weeks. And like we always share, we have some resources and some events at this holiday season. There's this one that we want to draw your attention to, if you are able. The Ben Davis Lions Club Pancake Breakfast is on Saturday, December 7th by 8 a.m. The location will be the Ben Davis University High School. The address is listed on the screen, 1155 South High School Road. So if you are interested, the cost before time is $7. That's if you're buying your ticket in advance, it's going to be $7. But if you decide to buy at the door, and that will be $8. So you have all you can eat pancakes, sausage, orange juice, milk, and coffee. You can eat as much as you want to, you and your family. So just pay attention, take note. Remember all this information we are sharing. You can always access them later on through the Parent Square message. You received this information, or you can also get them. Visit our LAP Parents channel, LAP Parents YouTube channel, and you'll be able to see all our past videos, and even the one that we are sharing today. And we have also listed some other resources here. Mr. Jackson mentioned the Giant Place Food Pantry the other time when he was talking. We always have this every month at the Ninth Grade Center. The next distribution date will be December 3rd, Tuesday, December 3rd at the Ninth Grade Center. So if you're interested, make sure you avail yourself that opportunity. Go there at the set time and you will be served. It's first come, first serve. We also have listed some very good resources here, mental health resources, the open enrollment with Medicare if you fall into that age category, or you have a family member or friend, feel free. Also, I want to draw our attention to this particular resource, the Grassroots Project. They always supply winter coats and accessories to families. All you need to do is visit their website. Here's their website. They have, different help that you can get. This is how to contact them, what they do. If you want to volunteer, if you want help, they are based in Indiana and Washington State. So these are all the things that we have decided to share with you tonight. Once again, we want to say thank you. And let me quickly go ahead and check the question somebody asked the other time. So yes, no school November. So I had somebody says, my son is in 7th grade. Okay, no. I would like to know how my child is behaving is in Garden City and in kindergarten. Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Jean. But feel free to reach out to your teacher in Garden City, and he or she will be able to give you that information. So we are at the district level. Our office is located at the Education Center. That's the central office at South High School Road. So I might not be able to know your child, but I tell you what, just reach out to Garden City and ask for the teacher, and the teacher will be able to give you the information you are requesting. I don't know if you have joined before now. I was asking if you have any feedback from the last parent-teacher conferences we had. We want to hear from you. We want to know how it all went. Was it okay? Did you get your interpreters? Did you need an interpreter? Were you able to get one? We just want to hear from you so that we can always improve on where we are supposed to. So thank you so much once again. And we will see you next month, December. And here is the end of our meeting today. We want to say thank you to some of our staff. Some of our staff are joining us, our teachers. Thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate you joining us. We will see you next month. All right. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Enjoy your holiday time. And we'll see you next month. We're going to be sharing very important stuff about holiday shopping next month in December. So we look forward to that. Have a good evening. Thank you.